here today talking about Saturn aspects, the aspects of Saturn. So first we want to understand that the influence of Saturn, whether it's an aspect, a conjunction, or Saturn ruling something, like ruling a nakshatra or ruling a sign, like a planet being in Saturn's sign, just the influence of Saturn is one that brings a sense of limitation and the heaviness and stress that we feel from that limitation. And it's a very deep concept to ponder. So examples of limitations are, for instance, time is a big limitation. The awareness of time, which includes that time is going to end, and the consequences of time ending, which literally means like death. So again, when we say Saturn is death and we want to turn it into some like simplistic thing, like something dies or someone dies, that's an outer manifestation, but the complex associated with it and everything implied by the awareness that things die is more important. And this is what brings nuance into the subject of Saturn and every astrological principle. What I do in these videos and teaching and everything else is actually try to unravel the principle rather than just put adjectives onto things that are just sort of mindless. So Saturn brings an awareness of limits. One of the biggest limits is time, and the pressure that a limitation imposes on the infinite possibility that would be there without the limitation. For instance, another limitation is actually form and structure, like your physical body. And again, notice the correlation between your physical body and the concept of death. The physical body is what's going to die, and we are aware of this. And the physical body is also a big limitation itself. What I mean to say is that we live in all different dimensions and realms. Lokas is what there is the word in Vedic teaching. There's a famous Sanskrit chant, Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu, means may all beings in all lokas or all worlds be happy. And there are infinite lokas, infinite worlds, infinite dimensions, infinite beings. And you as well are an interdimensional being. You're just not aware of it. Because you identify yourself as a limited creature who is walking around as a body with a brain, cognizing, quote, reality, which is a physical reality, you think that's the only reality, but it's not. You also have an astral reality that you visit in dreams and an imagination that's also not fettered by physical reality. And these are also levels of reality. They're layers of reality, but they're not confined by physical form. The physical form of space and time and form of the earth. And as such, the karma that we have with the physical world, Saturn rules that. So Saturn rules the implications of time and the actions as they magnify over time. This is what karma is. And the imposition of time into our physical existence. And in fact, the reason we've incarnated in this world of time with a physical body and physical consequences means, the only reason we have fear is because we're afraid we're going to die. We're afraid someone's going to kill us or hurt us or injure us. We have fear of those who we love because we don't want harm to come to them. This is all related to form. It's all related to identifying with a physical body. In other dimensions, we don't have that limitation, and that pressure isn't there. So that limit of physicality, of time and space, that's what I just described, time and space. That's what time and space are, is related to Saturn in the form of the pressure. Saturn makes us aware of that and shows the truth of what happens through time and space. What happens through time and space, especially when we measure time through space, if you measure time through a form that's existing in space as an object, then this form will just decay over time. Eventually it will wear out. And so this gives us the capacity to enter the timelessness, the formless, the part of you that's not just a physical being. But if you didn't have to deal with the pressure of time and the pressure of Saturn, you wouldn't evolve. You wouldn't become mature about who you really are. You would stay immature and keep identifying with your physical existence. So this, in general, is what Saturn is doing with anything that it influences. And there's a lot of greatness involved. This is the same greatness that makes us commit to something, because we don't have infinite time. We want to not waste our time, because we realize things have a certain amount of time and then we have to let go and move on from them. When people have a powerful Saturn, we're able to live easily in and out of time. Like, let's say we get involved in a partnership or in a friendship with someone or in a job, and it serves its purpose in time, then we need to move on. But maybe we're afraid of letting go of that, because what does the future hold? How would time unfold if I didn't have this? Am I still going to be safe because I'm identified with this form? Let's say we're in a job and, we're not sure we're going to have enough sustenance to support this body, so we waste our time staying with something that maybe doesn't fill us with joy and love and truth. So we waste time out of fear that our physical body and the limitations of the the physical world can only be satisfied if I sacrifice my happiness in this time and spend more time doing this thing, even though it doesn't fill me with truth and meaning. So eventually we learn that it's not worth it. And over time, if we don't have a good relationship with Saturn as we get older, we become very bitter. And of course, we don't experience it that way when we're hanging on to something too long. Instead, we wind up resenting the situation, resenting the people that we think are oppressing us. Let's say in that job that we're staying with too long because we're afraid of letting go of it. Because if I let go of this job, maybe I won't have as much money. And the more money I have this illusion of control. And if I'm in control enough, maybe somehow I won't die, or I don't have to face it. I can be insulated from that fear. And so what happens is we're not really flowing with the joy of life. So we don't often experience it that way. We wind up projecting outward, feeling like, well, everybody's oppressing me, or the world sucks, or we wind up being bitter and projecting that kind of grouchiness into existence. You can see the impact of time and what it's had on a person when you look at old people. Some people age very gracefully, and you can see that time has really brought maturity and reverence and appreciation for the time they've spent and the time they have left. Other people, you can see they're just all tangled up. So Saturn brings this nature and forces us to make a commitment to things that are valuable, that, where we don't waste our time. This is why the highest use of our time is through things like spiritual practice and, meditation and solitude. This is the highest power of Saturn, is to bring solitude. And where we're willing to be a grown-up and not be afraid and not cling to others and all of these immature notions. So when Saturn aspects, I'm going to talk mainly about the aspect, he brings this influence through an association. So it's not just, a conjunction is also very powerful, but that's different because it's more of a, when a planet is joined another planet, it mixes its energy, but it also gives more of a power. It's a mutual power when it joins and they're in the same place. It's like you're with Saturn and he's there with you, which is a different thing, a conjunction. When it's an aspect, and I'm going to talk mainly about the one-way aspect, then it's just Saturn's gaze. him looking at you and his influence. So one thing to understand is all aspects aren't the same. I'm talking about planetary aspects right now. You have mutual aspects which are opposite each other, which all planets aspect opposite each other, but then Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter also have a special aspect. And it's often a one-way aspect, means Saturn aspects 3 houses in front of him, and then 10 houses in front of him as well. So there's a 3rd house aspect from Saturn and a 10th house aspect from Saturn. And when those aspects occur, then that gaze, that influence of Saturn's intensity and pressure is just on you. And it's not being shared. It's not a 7th house aspect. It's not mutual. Because let's say if it's Saturn opposite Venus, then Saturn is bringing that gaze to Venus, but Venus is also returning it, and it's more of a sharing. I'm talking about that one-way aspect when Saturn is really looking at another planet. He's bringing that intensity, that heaviness, and imposing that limitation. So you can just take this concept of Saturn and limits and say, when Saturn aspects the Sun, I'm talking about a one-way aspect now, he brings a limitation, the awareness of our limited power, because the Sun is that infinite power within that we're trying to express. We're trying to connect to that consistent power that we want to bring out and share. Saturn says, you don't have infinite power. And we can experience that literally like loss of vitality. We won't have as much energy. We will, go back and forth with confidence. We'll be afraid of being humiliated. We'll fear being embarrassed. Where, the Sun is like, the heck with that. There's a big thing that I need to accomplish, and I'm not afraid of looking foolish. Saturn says, "Oop, be careful. You don't want to look foolish." And he brings this limitation. And again, it can create a lot of power and greatness, but we have to work through that sense of limited power. Sun, Saturn, limited power. Sun, Moon is limited feeling, limited connection mainly. Moon is about connection and wanting to feel whole. Just like a little baby wants to feel whole. When they first come out, they don't have any delineation. They don't even know they're separate. They're like, and then they look at their hand like, oh, this is me? Put things in their mouth. Okay, I actually am separate. And then we spend the rest of our life trying to be more separate. And trying to be separate, but yet still flow and feel whole at the same time. Saturn says, you're not whole. You're separate. Your heart doesn't flow with all of existence. And it's a painful separation. That separation from spirit, we feel it in the moon. So Saturn aspecting the moon can bring that intense focus and that intense gaze that says you are separate. Saturn Mars is you don't have courage. You're not courageous. You're not strong. You're not tough. You can't win. You can't defeat your enemies. Sometimes you're going to lose. That's what Saturn Mars says. Of course, this can be hard to bear, but it also gives us respect for the fight, makes us fight our battles wisely. In fact, Saturn Mars has a good influence on Mars overall, because Mars is where we don't consider our consequences and the things we can lose and might be too reckless and indiscriminate in our fight. Saturn brings a painful loss that makes us choose our battles wisely, but Saturn Mars is the limit, like you can't necessarily win. So he brings that awareness of the limitations of our personal strength and power. Saturn Mercury is you're not intelligent. There's a limitation on how smart you can be. Limited intelligence. No matter how much information you gather, you're never going to have it all. You're never going to learn it all. Because Mercury is the illusion that, well, if I'll keep looking for the answer. I'll keep, this. Saturn's like, you're never going to learn it all. And again, you have to understand, all of these things can create enormous genius. Depends on the dignity of the planets, the dignity of Saturn doing the aspect, There's a lot of variables. about whether or not that feeling and that pressure creates a lot of greatness or buries the person. If you wind up with that aspect in a place where there are other things that are difficult, this has to do with the dignity of the planet, the houses we're talking about, what the planets rule, all that stuff is the subtlety. But regardless of the subtlety, this is the complex that comes about. Saturn, Mercury, you're not intelligent. You'll never get enough information. It may bring an insecurity around speech, never feeling like what you say is appreciated or that you sound intelligent. You might be afraid to speak up, for instance. Again, and that's what Saturn does. He prevents things. So the Saturn Sun would prevent someone from acting through their inspiration. Saturn Moon could prevent a person from being open and from trusting that they can feel whole. Saturn Mars would prevent a person from fighting and, expressing their will. Saturn Mercury could prevent a person from expressing themselves and speaking. Because, again, what happens is every mistake with that thing, Saturn is the energy that makes us remember our mistakes. Again, through time, we remember our mistakes. Because our mistakes are dangerous. Your mistakes might kill you. And there's a certain part of our brain, because Saturn is a tamasic planet, that equates, mistakes and embarrassment and all these things with, potential death. In our animal heritage, if you make a mistake or you embarrass yourself or you do something against the collective, you might get ostracized from the pack, and then you die. There's a part of us that feels like we need approval from people. It's not just shallowness. It's on the reptile brain, it's actually in the limbic system, in the mammal brain. As mammals, we have to live, our higher function is to live in groups, and if we're kicked out from the group, we don't eat. So these are big things. This is why we want approval and want people to like us and all that stuff. And Saturn is awareness of those consequences and not wanting to repeat them. So again, Saturn, Mercury, we doubt our information and we doubt what we say. Saturn, Jupiter, no matter what, there is no purpose, there's no meaning, there's no hope. Right? Jupiter is about a sense of meaning and purpose. Oh yeah, this inspires me. When Saturn's on Jupiter, it's like, it's the same old crap. Same old stupid things people say. Don't believe any of that. It's just pointing out, pointing out the hypocrisy. You see this with, atheism and stuff like that. That's why Saturn has a problem in Capricorn, for example, because all of the practical problems of the world overwhelm the sense of hope and purpose, which is shown by Jupiter. So the limits of inspiration, and Jupiter's a planet that's trying to take us outside of the world, outside, higher than all the problems of the world. Saturn says, nope. It kind of brings it down and goes, no matter what, all religions, they're all crap. They're all, looking for the limit, looking for the excuse. Because obviously, the highest function of Jupiter is not just religion. Religion is a belief, but it's a philosophy. But Saturn can bring this kind of twisted up version of reality that's just kind of bitter. And Saturn, Venus, nothing's going to make you happy in the world. It'll never make you happy. You're never going to feel appreciated, no matter what. You get involved with people, they don't appreciate you, they don't respect you. It just hurts. You try to respect them, but you notice how nobody appreciates you. Again, Saturn, when you're looking at the chart, you're looking at a feeling. And again, the reason I'm talking about the one-way aspect right now is because when it's mutual, or if there's a conjunction, there's a sharing. And some of the coldness of Saturn gets changed by the other planet. So it's too much to talk about every conjunction. But aspect, you can see it's this thing. This is why the one-way aspect of one of those outer planets, putting it on the other one, is a big thing. So Saturn one-way aspect onto Venus, the person is going to feel like when they get in relationships, when they try to please the other person and compromise, they don't feel like it's returned. They feel the lack. They feel the limit. And thus they stop doing it. They stop trying. Why even try? It doesn't mean they necessarily stop completely. Obviously, you have to look at other factors, but this is what's in the person's mind. This is how they feel with a one-way Saturn aspect onto Venus. No point in trying to compromise. It's all so much hard work. This is the other thing with Saturn. It takes so much effort, and then in the end, you just have to let it go anyway. You try, and it's hard. It doesn't feel good, and then in the end, it's just that same like sense of dread and limit. So again, that in itself is just that's the thing we're working with, and that feeling is, it can be a catalyst for enormous, greatness, depending on dignities, houses, all these other things, or it can be something that can really stop us. And it stops us because we become defeated, and we become afraid of the feeling. We become afraid of the disappointment and the sadness that comes when we try. You want to think about this. We've all been just incredibly disappointed at some point in our life. The disappointment really has a lot to do with Jupiter on some level, but also the pain of it, and the desire, or the capacity or tendency to push on and to still believe, to still hope. It's hard sometimes, and when Saturn kind of has that way with us, that one-way aspect, it's like a person is can be kind of has sort of given up a little bit on that area of life, because it takes a certain naivete to try again in love, to try again with God, to try again with speaking our truth, to try again with what makes us confident, to try again to open our heart and feel whole, to try again to fight the good fight. It takes a certain amount of innocence to trust and believe, oh, maybe this time. And again, Saturn is not that innocent, naive, open heart. It's that experienced, rational, be careful. You trusted before, look what happened. And if we're not aware of that, it can really play on our mind. So, if you have Saturn, especially giving a one-way aspect to one of your planets, 3rd house in front, 10th house in front, particularly pay attention to the degrees. If it's a really close degree, you really feel it. I actually happen to have it on my moon, the 10th house, with Saturn in Capricorn, moon in Libra, so it's that 10th house, so it's pretty exact, and the degrees are very close as well. So feel that Saturn moon and that default tendency to not be so open, and feel like, that sort of openness can be hard to come by at times just by nature. I also have him aspecting Jupiter in the 10th house. So, and Jupiter's in Pisces, so that the actual, like the Saturn aspect onto Jupiter in my 10th house actually has been a catalyst for a lot of commitment to teaching, and Saturn, when he's powerful, gives us that drive to not give up, and to, for me, like to not waste my time in my career, and when things didn't inspire me, I would go to something else, because Saturn is aspecting Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house, for example. It can kind of give both, and it gives good for the moon, actually, also in Libra, because it's in the 5th house, which is creativity. So it can show a lot of power, like in this case, to be alone, to be creative by myself and all, but it can also have that closed off, be careful with your heart, and also be careful with teachings with the Saturn aspecting Jupiter. A little autobiographical, didn't plan on that, but what the heck. So you have to be, all those things come into play. And there's a story about Saturn aspect onto natal planets, that story of Lord Ganesha lost his head from Saturn's gaze. Saturn looked at him, and that's how Lord Ganesha lost his head. When Parvati had Ganesha, when he had a person head, she brought him out for all of the, gods, the demigods, the planets, all the gods to behold, and Saturn wouldn't look at him. Saturn was over in the corner like, no, I don't want to look at him. And Parvati said, why? Look at my child. And he says, well, my gaze can be hard to bear. It can be hard to bear my gaze sometimes. So I want to be careful and not look at your child because it could be hard to bear. And she said, no, you look at my child. And he looked at Ganesha and his head came off. Ganesha's head came off. It's a symbol of Saturn's aspect, his drishti. And it's his one-way drishti. It's like looking at you. It's a severe look. And it feels severe. It's like that cold, like, oh, better be serious. There's consequences. Time, only have so much time. Don't waste your time. And this sensitivity that when that thing goes bad, it hurts. It hurts us. Right? When that part of life goes bad, that Saturn is giving the one-way aspect to, it hurts. I mean, we really feel the pain. Saturn is where we feel the pain in life and have to persevere through it, have to go deeper into what that pain is, excuse me, what that pain is really about. I got a little thing in my throat. I'm not crying or getting emotional, actually. I sometimes do in these videos, but I'm not now. It's actually got something stuck in my throat. But we feel that pain and that deep sensitivity wherever Saturn is. This is what makes us go like kind of shivering, like, oh, uh-oh, be careful. The Grim Reaper is watching. Literally, this is how you can look at a drishti. You can look at aspect. It's like this thing is watching you. How do you feel when, a nice, friendly young girl, nice, friendly, happy little girl, or friendly, pleasant woman is watching you? And she's like, and she's encouraging, oh, great. Well, that's like a Venus aspect. How do you feel when a great teacher is watching you or there to assist you? Well, that's what Jupiter aspect is like. What do you feel like when the Grim Reaper is watching you? Well, that's what Saturn is like, right? So anyway, this is getting close to half an hour long. It's one of the richest subjects because Saturn is the last planet in the planetary order. And it's that limit that we have to respect and that we do respect. And when we're immature, it can be very painful. So all of the pressure of Saturn is to bring about maturity, to bring about overcoming the Venus problem, which is, well, I'm here to be happy, and when I'm not happy, life's terrible. Saturn brings more maturity after that and says, whoop, wait a minute. That ain't why we're here. And in fact, we're here to learn and to grow up, to be mature. And maturity comes through humility, through reverence, through honoring time, not wasting our time, and overcoming the attachment to form and the fear that accompanies it, because all of those things are just part of life in the body. And Saturn, a Saturn one-way aspect can be a great gift because you take this thing very seriously. And I know when I'm looking at someone's Saturn one-way aspect, and also the mutual aspect, but the mutual aspect is being shared, so it's different. But I know when I'm seeing someone's one-way aspect from Saturn that it's an area of life where they have probably made enormous progress, but it hasn't felt good. It feels painful. Particularly if the planet that it's aspecting is not in good dignity. Whatever the problem is with that planet, they're going to feel it. And if the planet itself is not in good dignity or in a difficult house or something else that's really crippling it or making it feel bad, then the Saturn aspect just doesn't help. It really can kind of blow the person away. I use the example of my Jupiter in Pisces. The Saturn aspect can really help the greatness of that emerge and focus it and make it serious rather than just, oh, I'm so inspired. It's not just I'm so inspired, right? It's a catalyst for working that thing, for not wasting it, not wasting time with it, not having to feel good about it, like, oh, I just need to be inspired. it's also, you see some of the work that I do now, like making videos and making sure to bring it into some form. That's a great thing that Saturn brings forth. If the planet is not in good dignity, though, it can just create a depression or a sadness, and the pressure can overwhelm the person in that area of life. Like in the example I use, like with me or with someone where there's a Saturn aspect on something of greatness, it brings the pressure that makes the person take it seriously, not waste it. Because you have reverence. You're like, well, this is something that I'm going to make a commitment to really focus on. Because I don't want to waste time. And this is worth making a commitment to, because in some ways we only get so much time, and we only have so much capacity to focus it. And we realize that if I'm not doing this, if I'm not making a video or teaching a class or doing a reading or doing something like that, then I'm doing something else, which is just not, which is wasting, all of that power. So Saturn also is the greatness, because it's the commitments that we make. All the things that happen of greatness in our life has Saturn influence. Raising our kids, finishing college, making commitment to something. These are the great things that we accomplish in life, and none of it's possible without Saturn influence. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. I hope this was helpful. Talking about the Saturn one-way aspect, it can be difficult to bear, but it's also the thing that can bring out the greatness and helps us navigate the illusion of time through, because we navigate the illusion of time and the illusion of time through the body. The illusion of time and space as the only world. We incarnate in the world of time and space through karma, because karma imposes a restriction on us that makes us learn something and evolve. All this pain of this world is so that we'll actually learn and grow. That's why the world is here. Because in other worlds we don't have so much pain, where our soul is more free. That's why people like to dream and all that. Areas where your soul is more free. Then you wake up and you got to deal with this. Oh, now I'm back to this other level of reality that's very related to Saturn. It says, oh, wait a minute. Got to wake up from the dream now. Because remember, you got this body that feels pressure. The body feels pain. The body's not going to last forever. You feel separated and, different from all these people. You don't have all this power. You don't have all this connection. You can't win every battle. You're not smart. You're not inspired. You're not happy. Gotta love it.